In 1841, a Scottish clockmaker buried two metal plates in the dirt, connected a wire between them, and watched a clock come to life. No battery purchased, no fuel consumed. The ground itself was powering it. He proposed using that same principle to power his electric telegraph systems. His name was Alexander Bain. He went on to install the railway telegraph lines between Edinburgh and Glasgow. Most Americans have never heard of him, but the chemistry he discovered is still sitting in the soil beneath your feet right now, and it still works. The man from Caithness, Alexander Bain, was born on October 12, 1810, in Leanmore, near Watton, in the far north of Scotland, Caithness County, the remote highland tip of the British mainland. His father was a crofter, a tenant farmer. There was no money or a formal education. At 12 years old, he attended a penny public science lecture that, in his own words, set him thinking and influenced his whole future. He apprenticed as a clockmaker, moved to Edinburgh, then to London, and began absorbing everything he could find about electromagnetism. In January 1841, Bain received his first patent for the electric clock, a pendulum kept in continuous motion by electromagnetic impulses rather than springs or weights. He proposed powering that clock with what he called an earth battery, zinc and copper plates buried in the ground, connected by wire, producing a resulting voltage of approximately 1 volt. What Bain had discovered was that moist soil, laced with naturally occurring salts, minerals, and weak acids, acts as an electrolyte, the conducting medium that allows ions to move between dissimilar metal plates. The zinc plate oxidizes, releasing electrons into the wire. Those electrons travel through the wire to the copper plate, completing a circuit. The soil carries the ionic current underground between the two plates. The result is a steady electrical voltage generated by nothing more than the chemical interaction between metal and earth. This is not free energy, and nobody is breaking physics. It is galvanic chemistry, the same fundamental electrochemistry your household AA battery uses, operating here with soil as the electrolyte instead of a manufactured liquid. By 1844, Bain had been contracted to construct a 46-mile telegraph line between Edinburgh and Glasgow. His electrical knowledge was not theoretical. He was building infrastructure. He later patented the concept of the fax machine in 1843, the first patent on the technology, though a fully working transmission service would not follow until 1865. He was, by any reasonable measure, one of the most productive inventors of the 19th century. His career was not without conflict. The prominent scientist Charles Wheatstone was shown Bain's electric clock designs during a private meeting, and shortly afterward demonstrated a similar electric clock to the Royal Society, claiming it as his own invention. Bain had already applied for his patent. Wheatstone tried to block Bain's patents and failed. When Wheatstone later organized an act of parliament to set up the Electric Telegraph Company, the House of Lords summoned Bain to give evidence and eventually compelled the company to pay Bain $10,000, a substantial sum, and give him a job as manager, causing Wheatstone to resign. For a crofter's son, with no formal education and no wealthy patron, it was a rare and hard-won vindication. He died on January 2, 1877. In later life, he had been granted a public pension in recognition of his inventions. He was buried in Kirkintilloch. The giver, the taker, the bridge, the earth battery's mechanism has 3 components. Understanding them takes about 2 minutes and explains why the technology works and why it has a real limitation that most online discussions skip past. The zinc is the giver. The moment zinc enters moist soil, a chemical process called oxidation begins. The soil's natural electrolyte water, carrying dissolved salts, minerals, and weak acids, strips electrons from the zinc atoms. Those electrons travel through the connected wire toward the other electrode. Engineers call zinc the sacrificial anode precisely because it is gradually consumed by this process over time. This is not a perpetual motion machine. The zinc is the fuel. The copper is the taker. The electrons arriving at the copper plate are accepted there, completing the circuit. Electrical pressure builds across the two plates. Current flows. The soil is the bridge. The moisture in the ground, carrying dissolved ions from natural minerals, connects the two plates underground and allows the ionic current to complete its path. As long as the soil is moist and the zinc exists, the reaction continues. This is identical in principle to a galvanic cell, the foundational chemistry behind nearly every battery ever built. The distinction is that the Earth provides the electrolyte for free, eliminating the need for manufactured acid or alkaline solutions. There is one additional phenomenon worth understanding, because it explains why Earth batteries in the historical record sometimes appeared to produce more current than the galvanic chemistry alone could account for. The soil is not a passive medium. It carries what electrochemists call telluric currents, naturally occurring electrical currents flowing through the Earth's crust. Generated by interaction between the Earth's magnetic field and electrical activity in the upper atmosphere. These currents are real and documented, and they are part of the reason Earth batteries are sometimes referred to as telluric power sources. In practical terms, telluric currents can supplement the galvanic voltage produced by the metal plates, adding a small but measurable contribution to the total output. This is not a source of limitless free energy. The contribution is modest and variable, but it does mean that a well-sited Earth battery in a geologically active area may outperform what a simple galvanic calculation would predict. The problem that stopped everyone and what solved it here is where the documented history gets genuinely interesting and where most attempts to build an Earth battery in someone's backyard fail. As a galvanic reaction runs, hydrogen gas bubbles form on the surface of the positive electrode in Bain's original design, the copper plate. Those bubbles accumulate and physically coat the electrode's surface. This process, called polarization, chokes the ionic exchange and causes the voltage to drop, sometimes within hours of initial operation. The battery does not run out of chemistry, it smothers itself. The solution to polarization in galvanic cells was well understood by the mid-19th century. Carbon and charcoal, when used as the positive electrode instead of bare copper, present an enormous surface area at the microscopic level, a structure of millions of interconnected pores and cavities that absorbs hydrogen bubbles as they form, preventing them from accumulating and maintaining the electrode's active surface. The use of carbonized charcoal electrodes in primary batteries dates to 1830, and this is standard electrochemical knowledge, not a secret ingredient. Modern engineering studies confirm the role of carbon electrodes in practical Earth battery design. A 2021 academic prototype used carbon as one electrode alongside aluminum and produced measurable voltage and current in series configurations. This is the engineering detail that separates a backyard demonstration lasting 2 hours from a system that runs for weeks or months. Replace bare copper with a carbon electrode, whether charcoal, graphite, or coke, and the polarization problem is substantially reduced. The reaction stays alive. The voltage stays stable. The patent record, a documented pattern. Alexander Bain was not the only person who recognized what the Earth could do. The U.S. patent record documents a continuous line of inventors working on this technology across more than half a century. In 1875, James C. Bryan received U.S. patent 160,152 for his Earth battery. In 1879, Daniel Drawbaugh received U.S. patent 211,322 for an Earth battery for electric clocks. In 1885, George Deckman received U.S. patent 329,724 for his electric Earth battery, an improved design using paired zinc and copper plates arranged in a spiral form, buried in soil to form a voltaic cell for powering small electrical devices. In 1898, Nathan Stubblefield of Murray, Kentucky, received U.S. patent 457 for an electrolytic coil battery combining an Earth battery design with a solenoid, which he used in early wireless telephony demonstrations. Each of these patents is publicly recorded, independently filed, and independently approved. They span 57 years. They represent 5 de-errant inventors in 2 de-errant countries working independently toward the same technology. What the patent record establishes is not a conspiracy. It is a pattern. The Earth battery was a live, active area of engineering development throughout the second half of the 19th century, pursued by multiple serious inventors, each building on the work of those before them. Why it stopped the reason the Earth battery faded from use is not complicated, and it does not require a villain. The Leclanche cell, invented by Georges Leclanche in France in 1866 and commercialized through the late 19th century, introduced a portable, self-contained battery that did not require the user to dig holes, find moist soil of adequate mineral content, or maintain buried electrodes against corrosion and zinc depletion. Its dry cell successor, commercialized in the 1880s and 1890s, was even simpler, a sealed package requiring no installation, no soil, and no maintenance. For urban populations, for portable devices, for industrial applications where consistent and predictable output mattered, the portable dry cell was genuinely superior. It could be manufactured in a factory to a consistent specification, shipped anywhere, installed in seconds, and replaced when depleted. The Earth battery could not be standardized in the same way, because soil composition, moisture levels, and mineral content vary enormously from location to location. A design that worked beautifully in mineral-rich moist soil in Kentucky might produce almost nothing in sandy, dry soil in Arizona. This is commerce, not suppression. A technology that is site-dependent, requires installation, and produces variable output competed against one that was portable, consistent, and replaceable. The portable battery won because for most applications, it was the better tool. What that victory cost, however, is worth noting for anyone thinking about energy in 2026. The U.S. generates approximately 3 billion pounds of household battery waste every year. Standard alkaline batteries contain manganese dioxide, zinc, and potassium hydroxide, none of which are benign in landfill environments. Lithium batteries present additional disposal challenges and rely on cobalt and lithium supply chains with significant geopolitical and environmental costs. An Earth battery, by contrast, uses zinc, a common, non-exotic metal, and carbon in the form of charcoal or graphite, both of which are benign in soil environments. When the zinc is depleted, the remainder is mineral-rich soil with a small carbon deposit. There is no supply chain to manage, no hazardous material to dispose of, and no quarterly purchase to make. For the specific applications where an Earth battery can genuinely serve, the comparison with disposable battery waste is not a close one. What the Earth battery actually is and isn't today, to be direct, this is not a technology that will replace your electrical panel. The Earth battery will not run your air conditioning, your refrigerator, or your electric vehicle. The voltage produced by a single Earth battery cell is approximately 1 volt. Useful current requires multiple cells in series, and even then the output is measured in milliamps rather than the amps that household appliances demand. What the Earth battery is genuinely suited to is a specific and real category of low draw, stationary applications, remote sensors, wildlife monitoring equipment, perimeter alarm systems, low voltage clocks, and similar devices that run continuously but draw very little current. For exactly these applications, an Earth battery installed in appropriate soil conditions can provide a long-duration power source with zero recurring cost, zero supply chain dependency, and zero battery disposal burden. A 2021 academic study on Earth battery system design found that a 25-cell series configuration of carbon and aluminum electrodes in soil produced 24 volts DC at 25 milliamps, enough to power small electronic sensors and low-voltage devices. That is a real result from a peer-reviewed engineering study. It is also a modest result that confirms both the technology's genuine capability and its genuine limits. The variables that determine whether an Earth battery works for you are well understood. Soil pH determines reaction speed, with more acidic soil delivering more current. Electrode surface area determines capacity. Burial depth determines voltage stability. Every variable is measurable before you commit to installation. The only site assessment required is a soil test, the kind that costs around $15 at a garden center to determine pH and mineral content. For anyone who wants to test this themselves before committing to a larger installation, the entry-level build is straightforward and inexpensive. You need a zinc plate or rod zinc anodes, sold for marine use, cost a few dollars each and are widely available at hardware stores, and a carbon electrode, which can be as simple as a block of activated charcoal or a graphite rod from a welding supply. Bury the zinc and carbon approximately 1 meter apart in moist soil. Connect them with insulated wire, and measure the voltage across the terminals with a basic multimeter. In suitable soil, you should see approximately 0.8 to 1 volt per cell. For useful output, cells are connected in series, with each additional cell adding roughly 1 volt to the total. A 25-cell array produces 24 volts at 25 milliamps, enough to run a low-power sensor or charge a small capacitor bank continuously. The zinc will need replacing periodically as it is consumed by the reaction, but the carbon electrode and the soil installation itself are reactively permanent. The chemistry Alexander Bain documented in 1841 has not changed. 5 subsequent inventors confirmed it across 57 years of independent patent filings. A peer-reviewed study published in 2021 confirmed it again. The earth beneath your feet still has mineral-rich moisture, still supports the same ionic exchange that powered a telegraph clock in Caithness 184 years ago, and still produces that quiet, patient electrical pressure provided the soil is right, the electrodes are properly chosen, and the application is matched to what the technology can actually deliver. That is the honest history of the Earth battery. Not magic, not suppression, just a documented piece of 19th century electrochemistry that solved a real problem before portable batteries made it unnecessary for most applications, and that remains quietly applicable for the specific cases where stationary, low-draw, maintenance-free power still matters.